I want to welcome everybody for coming and also thank you all for your support. I'm just so excited to be here. Welcome to Immaculate Heart Community's Lunch and Learn series. I want to just give you a few housekeeping. There's restroom out the double door to your left. And I want to also thank all the workers at St. Paul's who makes this possible. Chef Tim for the food, everybody who sets it up and makes it look so seamless. And to my amazing coworkers who inspire me every day, and to all of you, so thank you. A shout out also to our elders at the table here. I'm just so honored to be with you and love hearing your stories and driving through LA and learning more and more about you, so thank you. So I'd like to introduce Sherry Purcell, President and PEO of the Immaculate Heart Community. She's going to come up and give you some background, and then we'll get right into program. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. The technology gods are kind of playing with us today, aren't they? Anyway, we're even and ready to go now, so thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Michelle, for the hard work that you do to bring the Lunch and Learns to us every month. We're here once a month, and if you haven't checked out our website, please do that to find out the topics and upcoming events. We also have an initiative called Friends of the Heart, and I see some new faces here, so we want you to be our friends, so to check that out. Many of you know that our history is told very well through a documentary film called Rebel Hearts, and if you don't know our story, we did originate in Spain as a Catholic order of nuns over 180 years ago now. And that all changed in Los Angeles in the 1970s when we formed a lay community. We're not nuns anymore. We don't live in a convent. We call ourselves a community without walls. We're men, women, gay, straight, married, single. We live all over the continental United States. We have members in Canada and in England now. And we're a group of people who believe in God, and we live out our faith through justice and social justice activities. So the Lunch and Learn gives us an opportunity to live our goal statement, which calls for us to foster access for all persons to truth, dignity, and full human development, and to strategically change practices and situations which impede such access. So in a minute, I'm going to introduce you to Felicia Carbajal, the Executive Director, and Alex Tron, their staff attorney from Social Impact Center. And I think as you listen to Felicia, you'll recognize that their work aligns with our goal statement in terms of strategically changing practices. Now, I looked at their website, and it speaks to systemic discrimination and marginalization that disproportionately affects BIPOC and LGBTQ+ communities, which leads to higher rates of criminalization and incarceration. And they believe everyone deserves the opportunity to rebuild, restart, and reclaim their lives after they've been incarcerated. And they do that through trauma-informed care, advocacy, and empowerment. They help individuals in criminalized BIPOC and LGBTQ+ communities overcome stigma and finding their footing. Now, considering some of our audience members, I thought maybe I needed to do some definition of terms before they speak. So you might not be aware of the term BIPOC. What does that stand for? Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, which, according to the web, says it's a term used to recognize the unique experiences and histories of Black and Indigenous communities within the context of systemic racism and oppression in the United States. And so these communities face barriers to reintegration and access to resources once they come out of prison. And the Social Impact Center works to dismantle these barriers by providing targeted support, fostering healing, and empowering individuals to break cycles of harm and build new opportunities. You also might hear a term called expungement, which might be new to many of you. And again, I looked it up, so I have the formal definition. It's a court-ordered process where the legal record of an arrest or criminal conviction is erased from a person's public criminal record, effectively making it unavailable to the general public. And the idea here is that people who have served their time, they put their time in prison, should be able to come out of prison and not be continually persecuted and discriminated against because of their time. And so there's a legal movement now, and we'll be hearing about that, that seeks to eliminate the discrimination that people coming out of prison face in terms of applications for employment, housing, a whole raft of things that go on. So you're in a lunch and learn with the Immaculate Heart community. We have 3 prongs. If you've been here before, you know the drill. Educate. We're going to educate ourselves about this. We're going to pray about it. Those of us who have faith or prayer practices, we hold these issues, these systemic issues in our prayer for a change. And then you're also going to be called on to act. So as you're listening to Felicia and Alex talk, please think about what you might be able to do to impact some of the work or help with some of the work that they're doing. So with that, I welcome Felicia and thank you for being here.
And real quick before we get started, for any crowd interaction, if we're going to have any questions or anything you'd like to comment on, please raise your hand and I'll go ahead and bring the mic over. Yes, definitely hold it close. We do have people participating online and we want them to be included. Thank you, thank you.
I'm hopefully loud. Can we hear me? Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank the Immaculate Heart community for opening up this space, for Michelle, for Sherry. Michelle, thank you for really inspiring us and holding space and creating the space where we can be in community and have these types of conversations. And for the conversations that we've been able to have prior to being here, we can't thank you enough. So just like the slideshows in this image, for us, it's a big statement that we always like to make: when everyone loves, everyone heals. So I often tell people, I grew up in church. I went to church 3 or 4 times a week. Went to church a lot. I grew up in an incredibly conservative fundamentalist home where lots of things brought harm to me. So I'm grateful for this experience because although I don't really step into a lot of places of faith, my roots are deeply embedded in all of these places of faith. And just a day after the equinox and this new beginning, I'm so grateful to be able to be in this space with all of you. I want to take a moment to just ground us as people coming in community with one another in particular. And we want to also just acknowledge the original people and this beautiful place that they've helped to preserve so that all of us can enjoy the amazingness of the city of Los Angeles. So we wanted to acknowledge the Tongva people on a personal note and an organizational note. I also just want to dedicate this time to our late board member, my best friend and mentor, the late Melody Beatty. She wrote a bunch of best-selling books, and you'll be able to see a lot of her love spread out in the work that we do and the compassion that she brought. So you have to excuse me, I'm a little raw still. She passed about a month ago, and I didn't think it was going to make me emotional. So about me, not even going to go off the slide. You can read it. It's big enough to understand it. The the three most important things to identify outside of what this says in my little snippet of a bio is that I'm a queer, Chicanx, intersectional activist. I'm not single-issued in any way, shape, or form. Many things that arise in our society impact me greatly, also as an empath. I grew up in poverty, like a lot of people in the United States today and in the past. I got involved in movement-related work in the mid-90s. I had friends who were dying of HIV and AIDS, and they needed access to cannabis, and I had access to cannabis, and I wanted to make sure as many of my friends were able to die with dignity, and most importantly, have those opportunities to feel loved and to be able to stay in their bodies as they were experiencing what they were experiencing, which was a key component in my incarceration as well. And then the biggest thing for me is I want people to know my core value, because it's super important as we're walking in this world right now, this day and age, and with the political climate, that my core value is equality. Equality that is rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'll say it one more time. My core value is equality, rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So at the Social Impact Center, which was ostensibly born out of somebody hot potatoing me this organization and saying, hey, Felicia, you guys just won $9 million from City Council to help fund a social equity program to try to work on repairing the harms from the war on drugs. Here's a nonprofit. You guys are also doing expungement stuff. Here, do something with this. And it was hot potato, because Felicia was like, what? Take it back. No, thank you. And what we've realized throughout the years of having this very inclusive space where our staff, the folks that we serve, the people who volunteer with us help mold and shape how we move forward. So we're bold, and we're going to continue to be bold. We've recognized in this country right now, some of the terminology that we use is trying to be erased. We're not going to be erased. It's pretty simple for us. We will not be erased. We also are willing to double down on the terminology we use. And it takes a little crazy, right? Little revolutionary community in particular who are just, no, enough. Whether that means ya basta to you, whether it really means just standing up and saying enough. And so our bold statement and the problem that we're trying to solve really came about in conversation with community. So for us, the problem we're trying to solve is systemic criminalization, which we all know is rooted in white supremacy, gendered violence, and racial capitalism. It has produced and continually produces violence, including but not limited to police brutality, mass incarceration, and economic sanctions, which is going to be a big focal point of what we talk about in particular, because most individuals don't know that upon release, you're slapped with 40,000 sanctions. Most of them are all economic, continuing to put you in this perpetual place of poverty. We've also recognized in conversation and being in community that these violent acts that we've seen play out, it especially separates BIPOC and LGBTQ community members, especially in Los Angeles. So folks who don't realize, like, Los Angeles was one of the epicenters to a lot of the harm that we've experienced, not just surrounding the war on drugs, but in particular, the criminalization, the amount of people that we have who've been criminalized in this city would blow your mind. So in that, we want to figure out this problem that stems from people being removed from their power, people being removed from healthy options, their value as an individual, and then opportunities to even connect with one another. And then it also separates community from just the land and nature, and being able to express and do some of the basic things that a lot of folks don't realize and we take them for granted. So again, we're bold. We really are working on how do we change that. So our mission is really simple. As we've shared before, and as Sherry shared, we are building power and criminalized BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities through stigma-free organizing and mutual aid resources. Our theory of change is rooted in storytelling, education, cultural expression, intergenerational healing, and intersectional coalition building. So I know a lot of folks are like, well, that's a great mission. What does it mean in reality? So for us in reality, it means that we've deconstructed a lot of the reentry services that we provide based on my lived experience and the lived experience of other professionals, other community members that we've brought in to really hone in on how do we make this experience of removing this barrier something that allows community members to stay in their bodies, not disassociate from the experience, and to really be able to move forward and be able to share with their community what they just what they just experienced in this healing moment. And the reason why we say that is because nobody is announcing, hey, SB 731 passed. Millions of Californians, you are now eligible for expungement. Get in line. And we recognize that if we had a bunch of billboards everywhere, the opposition would immediately put a ballot measure together, ensuring that those of us who would qualify for expungement wouldn't be able to have that opportunity. So we brought together, as I shared, some thought leaders. We brought in mental health professionals who also have been criminalized to bring their perspective, legal professionals to really make sure that we're staying on focus, on track with what we actually can and cannot do. And we brought in community members, like each and every one of you, to come and join us and to create this kind of change in our communities simply by listening to another person. So this is a form for us in particular of mutual aid. We recognize that when community comes in and brings and dedicates and donates their time to do this type of work in particular, that they are bringing all of themselves to it. And it's a very crucial component to the work that we do. Now, our vision is we just want to build and see more power amongst criminalized community members. I had a 25-year-old conviction. I've been able to own a house. I drive a pretty fancy car today. I've been able to move in this world and to have what now is defined as a lot of privilege that I never thought that I would have as the poor little Mexican kid who grew up on welfare. And so I want to see as many community members as possible who have these old convictions, who've not only done their time, but have remained crime-free, be given this opportunity to build their lives again without the burdens and without the obstacles that lay in front of them. So our team, we are small but mighty. I know when you're like, gosh, just you guys do all of that? We've also been able to help over 60,000 people get their records expunged in the city of Los Angeles. And growing. That number continues to grow. So yes, we are a small but mighty team, and all of us have been impacted by criminalization in one way or another as first generation children of immigrants who've seen our parents have to struggle in spaces, to folks who've experienced substance use related issues, to folks whose parents have both been incarcerated and had to live with the aftermath of that. And folks who also recognize in their own privilege that it's, as they've been criminalized, that it's so important to stand up for community members as a whole, even if they don't have the same experience as them. And so I'm super proud of the small but mighty team that we've been able to build, and that our funders have been able to trust that we can successfully build something. And you'll get to hear more from Alex a little bit later. Alex will be able to really help define and help with the education portion. So some big things to know about us as an organization is we try to keep it simple. We have 4 strategic priorities. The first one is, as I mentioned, reentry. As somebody who, again, has been privileged. When I first came home, a couple of years after coming home, I got to work for an organization called Getting Out by Going In, and they were one of the first organizations that was a part of Linwood's Women's Jail. And I will never forget the experiences that I had working. I had a key to the jail, y'all. Like, that blew my mind that they gave me a key to the jail so that I could go to the bathroom. I could do my job, but I could go to the bathroom. And in all of the experiences and all of the conversations that we've had with community, whether it is community members who participated in our program and, our exit survey where we really want to know, how do you feel, what did you learn? And a lot of them would share with me the same thing, that like, there's something that doesn't feel right. And so for us, that afforded us this opportunity to really deconstruct the process, as I mentioned before, by bringing all of those folks in, to really start defining it by the human experience. Like, what do community members who've been this harmed, who oftentimes have been just shoveled from line to line, nobody telling you anything. I mean, I often tell people, I remember getting a vaccine in prison and I don't even know what it was for, but everybody was in line and everybody had to get it. And it's in those experiences that a lot of community members build distrust. They build not just shame, but also hold that space where, like, I deserved this. So we really focus on figuring out this human experience so that people can not only stay in their body and not disassociate, but where they can feel like they're educated. They can feel like, oh, Alex just explained to me this process, or Leslie, our paralegal, walked me through it, or our community engagement folks really took the time to share with me additional literature so that I can educate myself. And then we're really big on information share in our reentry program. So I came home a long time ago, but people still echo to me the same sentiment that, we were told we didn't have anything coming. That when we came home, the Scarlet Letter was gonna forever live on our shirts, and wherever we walked, wherever we went, this was going to be our reality. So for us, information share is a crucial, fundamental point of our reentry related work. Sorry, I had pretty pictures too. One of the other ways that we work really diligently to build community and to create a deeper understanding is we've invited a bunch of students, community members, to participate in our Leadership Through Service program, it lives on an online platform. You can do the training at your own pace. You can get certified on the different elements to be able to come and show up for community. My proudest moment, the family on the bottom. The young lady had been a volunteer at several expungement events that we had hosted in South Central. Cal State Dominguez student who said at the second event, hey, my dad has a record. Can I bring my dad? And I mean, I'm a little expressive. I was like, what do you mean? Why didn't you bring him on the first time you came? And so she invited her dad to come and to participate and get his record expunged. And we're talking about somebody who's been home for a decade, who is a substance use counselor, who's working in the field, who didn't even realize that this opportunity had existed for them. And the young lady afterwards came up to us and shared, Felicia, I didn't even know that I needed this healing, to just hear my dad's story. Because although I know a lot of bits and pieces about my dad, I never heard what he had experienced prior to incarceration that put him on that path, and it gave me so much compassion. I love that story because that's really why I do this work. It's like, how do we figure out solutions to be able to heal in community? I'm not just a person who committed a crime, I'm also a violent crime survivor, which I know a lot of folks are. And this was one of the most healing things that I thought we could bring to the community, to be able to allow folks who've experienced harm to help. And this is one of my favorite stories because she still comes. She still helps. Not just her dad, but whoever's going to be sitting in front of her. And I think that's not just a beautiful experience for her to be able to hold, but I think it's also a true testament to what it looks like for us to heal in community with one another. We also focus on some storytelling. And I know what everybody thinks. Storytelling, oh, we're gonna, I'm out. I'm out of every closet. I don't live in any closets anymore. But not everybody feels as comfortable with being able to share, I'm a formerly incarcerated person. So we've really tried to emphasize that storytelling is a tool to connect. And oftentimes connection really is started at trust. So if we operate at the speed of trust, you can share what you're comfortable with sharing with somebody else. Because oftentimes, and this is something that during the marriage equality movement, somebody shared with me as we were working to, I'd gotten married during that tiny little window when it was legal, and went to fight so that the rest of my community could have access to marriage shortly after for the Courage campaign. And somebody had told me, hey, Felicia, to touch another person's heart, you have to use your own. And those are the types of storytelling tools that we really try to encourage the folks who are participating in our work to allow to be their foundation. Not only do you operate at the speed of trust, but to touch another person's heart, you really have to use your own. So you don't have to just say everything or share everything. There are morsels that allow you to connect. One of the other big things that we do when it comes to storytelling, and we're really diving deep into this process about body autonomy. So for us, when we host our events, we give community members an opportunity to decide whether or not they want to be put on blast, which just means they want pictures taken of them and that level of exposure, because oftentimes they've never been given that chance. Or they're like me, who first time I went to go get a physical before you enter school, and it was at a church. And I thought everybody went to church on the weekends and went to the doctor's office, and we're experiencing just lines with people taking pictures, cameras, that's just how it happened. And the reality is we realized that not allowing community that opportunity to have body autonomy, especially during storytelling, was causing harm. So we've worked diligently on figuring out what those solutions look like so that people can, one, as I said, operate at the speed of trust, two, use their hearts to be able to touch another person so that there's compassion involved with their story. This is a big one for us. We like to make friends. Friends and connecting with community is so crucial. It's how we do our work. Alex will probably illuminate it on it a little bit more. We partner with a lot of different service providers to do know your rights trainings for staff. Super simple. We just want people to know what's going on and to be informed, especially if you're supporting this population. And for us, what that looks like, let me go back because Danny would be, sorry y'all, Danny would be a little, one of the first things that we realized is we're really good at organizing events and big events and small events. And I like to share my knowledge as I'm stepping into becoming an elder and who's hosted many events across the country, that when we operate in coalition, we really are focused on helping people better organize and better come together. Those are some pictures from our last event. Sorry, now I'm messing up. So these are all of our friends. These are all of the different organizations, groups that we've worked with. Not even all of them. I think these are the ones just in the last year. But over the last 5 years, we've collected a nice stable of organizations that really have seen value, not only in the work that we do, but figuring out how do you join us and be a part of this work, and how do we create change together. So one of the big things that always comes up, it's like, Felicia, to what end? Like, what results are you trying to achieve? So, super simple. We believe that expungement and the reentry services that we provide and the community that we've created helps in the reduction in recidivism rates. We know that economic growth and stability are a byproduct of affording people an opportunity to get their record expunged. And then this is something that often goes overlooked, but it really does strengthen family and community ties. So to dive a little bit deeper before I told you this is where I mess up. dive a little bit deeper, especially into the reduction in recidivism rates. Just so folks know, like, when we passed SB 731, and while I was simultaneously running this organization, I also joined Alliance for Safety and Justice because I wanted to get free myself. So I worked for one of the largest public safety organizations to ensure that SB 731 was passed so that I could get my record expunged. Because after helping tens of thousands of people, I knew it was my time to be able to step up and say, well, I want next. Dibs, pick me. So ostensibly by allowing individuals with past convictions to seal their records after completing their sentence and remaining crime-free for 4 years, SB 731 facilitates better access to employment, housing, and educational opportunities. So in a nutshell, these factors are crucial in reducing the likelihood of reoffending, thereby enhancing public safety in and of itself. So with economic growth and stability, I want everybody to really listen to this number. So the law is projected to boost California's economy by approximately $20 billion annually. I know folks will ask, well, how does this happen? Well, it enables over 1 million residents, 1 million of your neighbors across the state of California, and a lot in LA County in particular, to participate more in the workforce. So for folks who, I know everybody in this room already understands this, but economic stability is closely linked to lower crime rates, contributing again to safer communities. And when we talk about strengthening family and community ties by removing barriers that hinder reintegration into society, you know, the bottom line with SB 731 and why I could spend 2 years working for 2 organizations to get this passed, in particular as we were dreaming to figure out how do we create these creative solutions. We know that SB 731 and access to expungement promotes family stability and community cohesion. Individuals are better positioned to support their families and engage positively within their communities, fostering environments less susceptible to criminal activity. So again, creating safer communities. All right, so before I pass the presentation time over to Alex and the next few, I really wanted to talk a little bit more about how all of y'all can get involved and be a part of this deconstructed process in particular, because it is really the cornerstone of the work that we do. And we want more community members to be a part of the $390 million worth of public benefit that our small organization has already created, just by affording people an opportunity to dive deeper into their second chance. I also want to share with folks, because Alex and I were talking about this as we were carpooling over, and you know, I've had so many folks this last week tell me, you're doing God's work. And I was just like, what does that mean? Like, tell me, like, I'm just trying to live my values out loud. And just, you know, what does that mean? And so I challenge all of you as you're thinking about, because I don't know what that means, and afterwards I like people to tell me what that means after we're done, because I'm not the hero in this story. Alex is not the hero in this story. Danny, who was here earlier, isn't the hero in this story. Combined, when we come together, aren't even the hero yet. We're just a part of that cog that's allowing community members that opportunity to really be able to connect with themselves by providing them that space to be able to feel seen and heard, and to remove this barrier that continues to create all of these obstacles for somebody who, I can tell you, when I came home, I was so excited to be free. I did a SHU term. For folks who don't know what SHU is, it's the Secured Housing Unit. So I was a bad girl inside this institution, and I really wasn't. I circumstances happened. I even ended up being assaulted by several correctional officers during this entire experience. But on the 5th day, after things had settled, I could go outside. And I was so excited. I can't tell you how excited I was after hearing all of the screams and all of the energy and angst of everybody who was living in my new housing situation. And they walked me in chains to go outside. And I get outside, there's nobody else there, just me. Sky looked beautiful, I could feel the sun. And as I looked up, I realized I was in a dog cage. That I had literally been caged, and not in a dog cage in terms of a small cage, it was still a large cage. It's the kind of cage that you see in institutional settings, but when I was there, I felt like, man, y'all just put me in a dog cage. I remember walking back, knocking at the door, seeing if they would let me in. They told me I couldn't be let back in until I had used up all of my time. So I sank along the door, and I looked out, and I remember asking God, what did I do? Not why I was there. I knew why I was there. But I was just like, what did I do? And is this always going to be what the world looks like for me? And I share that moment with you because as an organization that's committed to that's committed to intersectional justice, who's willing to center diversity not just as a checkbox, it's not a checkbox for many of us that are in this room, but as the foundation of true equity. And until this justice is realized, we can't reach our full potential as people. A true civil society, which Alex and I this morning were really questioning some of those notions of what civility has to look like. The one truth I know that it still demands the inclusion of all voices, all histories, and all struggles. It demands that on a daily basis. So we call on you, the spiritual and community leaders, to step up with conviction. Our communities require your leadership in building a care-first, community-centered future. So we always invite folks to just join us and live their values out loud, now more than ever, with the way that we are, the state of this country, the cuts that are occurring. Thankfully, we are not federally funded. Intentionally not federally funded as well, because we recognize where the trajectory of this country was going. But also we want everyone here to recognize that that puts us as a small little fish in a big pond with community members, leaders, organizations that are doing amazing work who are sucking up everything. And for us to be able to continue to do this work with community, in community, for community, we need more community to understand not just the necessity of the work that we do, but to really have a little faith in not just my leadership, but those amazing souls that I showed you to join us in these efforts. I'll pass it along to Alex. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Felicia. And there's Felicia's contact info if y'all want to follow up with them after the presentation. Thank you everybody for having me. My name is Alex Tron. I'm the staff attorney here at the Social Impact Center. And I'm going to be talking to y'all a little bit about expungement. Sherry did a great job defining expungement earlier. Good job. But I really want y'all, when we're talking about this new word expungement, or at least a term that might be new for y'all, I want y'all to think about, when I say expungement, just think about the word grace. Does a person deserve a second chance? Or should we be defined by the worst moments of our lives? I say, and here at the Social Impact Center, we say that you shouldn't be defined by the worst moments of your life, that human beings make mistakes, that we are fallible, but we have a chance to pick ourselves up, that people can be better when given the opportunity. And I believe, and I would garner to say that most people in this room believe, that if given that opportunity, people will make the most of that second chance because they recognize the impact that grace can have in their lives. I've certainly felt it in mine. To tell y'all a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, Felicia did a great job talking about our mission and values. I'm going to be talking about what expungement means and who qualifies. So hopefully, again, anybody in this room or for folks that might be important in your life to help spread that information, like Felicia mentioned, sharing information is a core part of our mission. Talking a little bit more about the benefits of conviction relief, a broader term just for expungement. And then lastly, a little bit about our model and process. So to introduce myself, again, my name is Alex Tron. I'm the staff attorney. I'm a recent graduate of USC Gould School of Law. I've been working for the Social Impact Center for coming up on 2 years now, but I've been practicing for 5, working exclusively in expungement and reentry. I've helped clear hundreds of records at this point, probably thousands. But my life and my path to law has not been a linear one. When I was growing up, I had multiple justice-involved family members. I had an uncle that was incarcerated for over 2 decades, and the only reason why he got out was as a result of some of those COVID-era, aging folks in prison policies. I myself, though, narrowly managed to avoid getting a criminal record. Back in 2017, due to a lot of difficult internal and external factors, I found myself living in my car and struggling with substance abuse. And I know for a fact that if a couple nights had gone differently, I'd have a record just like the folks that I serve. Thankfully, I'm coming up on 7 years clean now, and thank you. But I know that you shouldn't be defined by those moments. The fact that I was lucky, the fact that I had all the privilege that my white body allows me to have, means that I was able to avoid that criminal record. But if I had gotten a criminal record, I should be able to move on. And I know that if that's true for me, that should be true for everybody else, no matter what your conviction history was. Because ultimately, what you were in the past doesn't matter. What matters to me is, and what should matter to everyone here, is what folks are doing with their lives right now. And that really is the most important thing. And that's what we try to emphasize with the grace that we provide through expungement. So State Bar of California is really, really important on this. I want to mention, while I am an attorney, I'm providing legal information today. I'm not giving any advice specific to your case. I'm just trying to educate the community as best as I can. So I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. I just want to make sure you know it. So to let you all know about expungement, again, the concept of grace legally, and then who qualifies. So like Felicia alluded to a little bit earlier in the presentation, when you have a criminal record, with that criminal record comes a combined 44,000 legal sanctions, which are known as collateral consequences, right? So these are restrictions on where you can live. These are restrictions on what kind of benefits you can access. These are restrictions on what kind of jobs you can have. Even in California, depending on the conviction, you can be restricted from even running for political office, depending on your conviction. So these 44,000 legal sanctions, again, are collectively known as collateral consequences, and they impact the approximately 1/3 of Americans that have some form of a criminal record. Again, that's huge. That number blew me away when I first heard it, and it still blows me away today. But across all those 50 states and the federal government, truly, an individual with a criminal record is impacted that drastically upon completion of their sentence. And again, to be clear, these are just sanctions that follow them for the rest of their life for no other reason than to be punitive. No other reason other than to just keep folks down, to keep people stuck in those cycles of poverty. And by providing our services for free in the manner that we do, we're trying to break that cycle, help people pick themselves up and move on with their lives. So I promise there won't be a quiz on this. I just like to provide some information for folks that are interested. But I do want to touch on something that Sherry actually mentioned earlier when you mentioned that that there's a movement for expungement. Expungement's been around for a long time. Some of these laws have been on the books for 3-4+ decades. People have been expunged with cases that long. The real movement is increasing access. The problem has been, and I think the next slide mentions how much traditional expungement services cost. But if you're rich and you can pay for an attorney, the law has been letting you move on like nothing has happened for years. What really hasn't been happening is folks that are, low income, impacted by the war on drugs, system impacted in general, have been stuck with these records. So it is quite literally systemic racism in action. Over-criminalized, over-policed communities have a higher rate of records even though they commit crimes at the same rate, right? White communities smoke weed at the same rate as BIPOC communities, but BIPOC communities have police there more often, therefore they have more criminal records. Well, let's even say for the folks that do get arrested, if you're part of one of the white communities, you're able to expunge your record because you have access to an attorney. The folks that are in the lower income communities, they're stuck with those records for the rest of their lives. The public defenders that represented them might have told them information. They might get half-true information, like Felicia mentioned, when they get educated from whatever prison lawyer person that educates themselves within the system. But that information is often incorrect, half-truths that might have been true at one point but have no longer been accurate. So you literally see how criminality isn't defined by communities. Criminality is not defined by race. What is defined by race is how much that record continues to impact your life for the rest of your life. And that's what we're trying to do by offering these services for free. So like I was mentioning before, again, for a private attorney, they'll charge anywhere from $1,000 for a misdemeanor to $3,000 for a felony. That's per conviction. So if you think about it, for a person that falls into a bad string of luck like I did, let's say you shoplift to feed your addiction. Now you get caught with a small amount of drugs. Possession, minor possession, another misdemeanor. Heaven forbid you've gotten to the point where you don't have a job anymore and you're providing drugs to others in order to feed your addiction more. Boom, now you have a felony, right? So let's do the math on that. Couple misdemeanors, get a felony, you're easily up to $10,000, right? And that's just in the attorney's fees. That's, fingers crossed that you get the expungement granted on the first chance. But it's a catch-22. Because when you get out, you have those 44,000 legal sanctions, you can't get a job. So you could never make the money to pay the $10,000 that would let you make the money to pay for an attorney in the first place. So truly, folks are caught in this cycle of systemic racism and systemic poverty that just keeps people trapped for generations. And that's what we're trying to disrupt. So by providing our services for free, by making the live scan free, we're trying to make that as affordable and as accessible as possible for folks. So I talked again in broad strokes about what an expungement does, but to nail it down for 3 concrete areas that we really find it really benefits folks. So housing, employment, and then ultimately self-respect. For housing, expungement removes the record from public access, doesn't actually destroy the record or anything like that, but landlords aren't able to prejudicially judge someone based on their criminal record history, right? A simple Google search or a background check won't be able to provide information. The landlord is forced to judge people based on where they're at right now, credit score, everything that you should be judged on as a tenant, because what you did 20 years ago when you were, young, now you're a grandma, you shouldn't be judged based on your past decisions. You should be judged based on who you are today. Secondly, employment. This is an area where the law is actually a little bit stronger. Unfortunately, there is still some discrimination for landlords, largely to choose or the discretion for landlords to discriminate in terms of who they choose to rent to. But with employers, it's a lot stronger. So they cannot, factor in any kind of expunged record if some fragment of that record exists online. They can't factor that into any of their decision making, their statutory protections for the employees. In addition, it also just opens up a lot of doors. I had a client previously who had a bad string of way, very similar to my own, in the early 2000s, where he had a couple of credit card fraud charges, using credit cards for somebody that he knew in ways that he shouldn't in order to feed his addiction. Cleaned up his life, was doing fantastic, started working at a local union, a carpenters union, working his way up the ranks. He was fantastic. I wish I could tell you more about his story without breaking client confidentiality, but truly, this man it's absolutely incredible. But he was right on the cusp of getting a management level position within the organization. But that criminal record, even though it was a misdemeanor, I didn't even highlight that, apologies. That credit card fraud, paid back all the restitution, everybody was square. It was a misdemeanor from 2007, and this was 2022. We were able to get that record expunged, even because it was just a misdemeanor, move forward, and he got a 6-figure job. That the only thing holding him back was this misdemeanor because of the particular bylaws of the union, right? Because of the nature of his conviction, because it was due to fraud, that was the thing that was holding him back from this 6-figure position. So it really can be as, that one thing is the thing that's holding folks back. And if you don't have that $5,000 to $10,000 to pay it, again, you're just stuck, and so many doors are constantly closed to people. Like Felicia was mentioning, some of that $20 billion in estimated economic growth that comes as a byproduct of some of these legislations, that really, that manifests in the life of individuals like the folks that individual that I was serving, that opening up so much economic growth in terms of earning potential. And then lastly, self-respect. This is a hard area to quantify with a dollar value. It's certainly harder than housing and employment. But for many, like Felicia mentioned, like they feel like this scarlet letter will define them for the rest of their lives. The weight and that burden of constantly, even if it's been forever ago, not sure if somebody's going to find out. Whether it's a landlord, whether it's a romantic partner, whether it's, family members, friends, somebody at church, like it's that fear that you live with, that chronic stress and anxiety that creates such a burden and such stress on folks' lives. We haven't done any kind of research or study, and I'm still looking for concrete data, but, any kind of PTSD, similar, symptoms and things like that. It is truly something that follows folks. And the feeling of that burden being lifted by the expungement, by that grace that's being provided by the court system, folks break down in tears regularly. Even if they haven't got the new job yet, they haven't got new housing, they just don't have to worry about being prejudicially discriminated against based on who a person that they no longer are. So again, with housing, employment, and self-respect, we're changing lives with expungements, and it's really lifting up burdens and empowering community to be the best versions of themselves. And then a little bit about our model. So we do things a little bit differently. Institutions like the Public Defender's Office are very well-intentioned. They're hardworking folks, and I have nothing but respect for them. But ultimately, they're spread very thin, and in a lot of instances, my clients refer to the public defenders as the public pretenders. Like they're the people in their minds that got them in this situation in the first place. And again, I know a lot of folks here know public defenders, hardworking, well-intentioned people, but knowing that it's hard for them to trust the same organization that harmed them in the first place. The same organization that has, I know the workloads of some public defenders, I'm good friends with them, 300 cases plus going at once. It's hard to give the feeling that you care about someone when you're trying to balance all of these competing priorities. So we really take a human-centered first focus and try to minimize the amount of work that the community member has to do. We empower volunteers to help them feel like a human, and then we ultimately try to help them tell their story. We try to humanize it as much as possible. So first we get an intake, we get their rap sheet, that's their record of arrests and prosecutions. That's what we need from the California Department of Justice. It has like their criminal record history, everything that every conviction that they have. Then they attend one of our expungement events. That's where they draft their declaration. So that's the first person letter to the judge, and that's kind of what Felicia was talking about earlier when they mentioned volunteer opportunities. So we have a volunteer sit down with a community member and interview them. It's their past, it's their present, and it's their future. Past, everything that was going on with their life at the time, their present, everything that they're doing now. as well as their future, the things that are holding them back. Carolina's done a handful of them. Give it up for Carolina, one of our MVP volunteers. Let's go. Y'all might have seen Easter egg. She was in one of the pictures earlier. Yeah, that was but it's a great healing opportunity, and that's really what thank you so much for the time. That's really what we like to lead with. We treat people like people. We don't treat them like a number. We don't treat them like another, case file that we need to get across. We really try to focus on getting their story, having them, trust and build up that trust within the community member for us through our volunteers that are reflective of the communities that they're from, and then ultimately draft that declaration. Because that's what we realized. The public defender wasn't doing that as much, and that's an area where that can push the needle for a judge, because a judge normally will just get a rap sheet that has a list of convictions and that's it. There's no context, no ability for that individual to tell their story. Maybe they have a chance to do so the day of at their actual expungement hearing, but now you're asking somebody with little to no legal training to summarize a compelling argument of their case to a judge who, in all fairness, has probably made up their mind before that person has even approached the lectern. So by giving this declaration, we're giving that information ahead of time. We're letting the judge know who this person is more than just their convictions. And we've had great success in terms of helping move the needle and get folks across the finish line with clearing their records. We do all the legal team, myself as well as my paralegal, do the processing in the background. We file them. And then we have the individuals attend the court hearing for the first round so that we can help as many people as possible. We do this because in a lot of the non-controversial cases, it's relatively rubber stamp. And that's honestly one of the most infuriating things about how much private attorneys are charging. It's $1,000 for a form where the judge doesn't even have discretion. These attorneys are just preying on people, their lack of knowledge about the legal system, which is arguably, the entire legal profession. But I don't even want to get into that right now. But I just want to say, in this isolated instance, I'm really highlighting how predatory the legal profession is. And that's why we're doing everything we can. So again, if they even have a hearing, they'll go for the first one. If they need assistance because it gets denied, either myself, a pro bono volunteer, will attend in subsequent hearings. Our intake form is here as well. Like Felicia mentioned, we have a variety of opportunities to volunteer as well. We have 2 volunteer opportunities coming up. We have 2 Saturdays in April. We have one down in South Central at PV Jobs, and then on the 26th, we have one in NoHo as well. I encourage y'all to sign up to volunteer. Again, it's super easy. The interviews take maybe 15 to 20 minutes. We do all the drafting of the letters. So in reality, you're just taking notes, interviewing a community member, and then going over the letter with them just to make sure that it's ready. No legal experience needed, no legal training. The only thing that we require is that folks complete that leadership through service training so that we can make sure that nobody's causing any additional trauma or re-traumatizing folks through the process of that interview. Ultimately, our community members come first. We love our volunteers, but we're not going to cause harm in the pursuit of just trying to help people. And that's my contact information. I appreciate y'all so much for the time today. Like Felicia mentioned, a round of applause. There we go. Yeah. I'm not gonna wrap up and I'm probably gonna say, well, that's okay. But I do want to say I appreciate everybody here today. Organizations like ours, with this current administration, times are tough for everyone, but especially for organizations like our own. Our current funding, we're funded through the County of Los Angeles, expires end of Q3, and we're still looking for opportunities to keep this work going. So I know that with the Public Defender's Office, they provide a variety of services, but we are truly critically necessary as they're spread more and more thin with Prop 36 and a variety of other things to provide these services to help break those intergenerational and frankly, incredibly racist cycles of poverty that folks get trapped into. Thank you so much for your time. Again, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. So thank you for joining us. So we're going to open it for Q&A for our people on Zoom. Oh, we've got hands up already. And for our audience here. And you're both mic'd, okay?
So I just want to make sure I understand. I'm not going to use this room as an example because I know all the people here. if I'm in a movie theater, because I actually still go to movie theaters, a third of the people in that movie theater have some form of a conviction.
Yes. Some form of criminal record. Across the United States, that's true. Yes.
I mean, that is stunning.
Yes. Yep.
So people in my life
Yes.
have convictions that I don't know about,
Correct. I'm sure they feel a ton of shame regarding it, right?
that they
And they're-
would not discuss with me.
Yeah.
I'm really blown away by that. Thank you both. And just as a white woman of privilege, there's so much hateful talk that's going on. I just want you to know that I personally am grateful for the work that you're doing with your community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dennis. So I have a friend that sort of has a sword of Damocles hanging over his head, in that here in California, with the 3 strikes laws, his next conviction will put him in prison for life. How would expungement, would that be able to affect the chance if he ever gets picked up for anything again, it going against the 3rd strike?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. So that is one of the limitations. In California, expungements do a lot to remove it from public access, so that private landlords, private employers won't be able to judge folks. But it doesn't affect prior ability, which is the 3 strikes laws, which is honestly one of the most frustrating parts when we go in to argue these, and the DA will oppose them, because nothing about this is letting people off scot-free. You know, if the district attorney is going to be able to convict them in the future, they can use those expunged records if they could use them, right? So it's not a public safety issue at all. It's really just a punitive step to keep folks in line or keep folks in that poverty. Again, unfortunately for your friend, it won't provide any relief, but truly, you know, anyone arguing against these laws is arguing in bad faith, because, it's hard to capture everyone, but I would say, and I believe that they're arguing in bad faith, because they either don't understand the law or don't care to understand the law, because it doesn't hamstring prosecutors, it doesn't hamstring law enforcement in any meaningful way. It just lets people pick themselves up and move forward.
And I can speak a little bit. I have 2 strikes. I got my record expunged. I got a nice letter from a very busy judge commending me on everything that I did, but still realizing, and I don't even jaywalk, like, to tell people, like, I'm terrified of the idea, like, you're not going to take me alive. Like, that kind of framework, I'll never be incarcerated again, sits here. And I would imagine with your friend, and for me in particular, like when I shared with one of my public defender friends that I got 2 strikes for the same case, like, and just the look on her face where she was just, you know, I already knew. I was all like, man, they called me Feliciana Carbajal when I was at court. I already knew I was in a lot of trouble because only my mom calls me that, but I didn't really recognize, you know, some of those bigger implications that, like, man, it was easy to just throw me away because I was a person of color. So.
I mean, 2 questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, 4th question, sorry. He is a person of color, and he is a functional alcohol. I worry about him every day because of those 2 things.
Yeah.
You're a good friend.
You're a good friend.
You're a good friend. You're good friends.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
2 questions. One, you mentioned about being able to run for some political offices after expungement. I'm just wondering, what is the impact to which populations, whether it's state or federal or whatever, to a person's ability to vote? And then the other one was, if you are aware of a group that lives south of the border called the 3 Strikers, I was surprised when I found out that there are groups of people that have gone down south rather than to have to deal with what happens when they get 3 strikes. I mean, honestly, that's where I get my bootleg tequila from Jojo in Puerto Nuevo. It's a group of 3 strikers.
And we're not laughing at you, just that question is, we were in dialogue about that just because, I don't know what this country is going to look like. And I've already started exploring, like, what does it look like to live in ancestral land in Sonora? Just to be able to feel safe, because will I become criminalized because my personal website for the work that I've been doing for the 20-some years says that I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. And am I on a list? Are they going to come and get me? I have 2 strikes. And what does that look like for me? And we were just talking about, like, I'm getting ready to buy some land in Mexico to dream of what this is going to potentially look like, because I don't know. Puerto Peñasco is where my family.
And to your first point regarding voting rights, so from my understanding, there's broad discretion on state by states regarding the ability for felons to vote. In California, they are allowed to vote. Different states, those restrictions are different. And then my comment earlier regarding running for elected office, specifically for California's office, it's like specific offices, and it's kind of like the client that I had assisted, it's specific types of conviction. So it's like fraud. I don't remember them off the top of my head. It's relatively narrow, but it is a restriction, again, based on this certain type of conviction. Yeah.
Hi. First of all, thank you both for coming. I'm formerly incarcerated too. And yeah, I vote now. But I had to wait till I got off parole. I did 29 years in prison, and I just appreciate listening to you reminded me a lot of me. I just want to tell you that, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure we have some friends in common. I'm sure we do. I was at CIW.
And I was just going to say, too, consider that new law we mentioned. I realize I don't know if we ever defined it. SB 731 makes it so that previously for folks that had gone to state prison, there's county jail, and the difference county jail versus state prison. State prison, there wasn't any expungement opportunity at all. Like Felicia mentioned, now after a waiting period, folks are able to petition the court. It doesn't mean guaranteed, right? They can just ask, and if you have those cases where you've been out for a long time or the judge uses their discretion, you can get it expunged, which is the idea that you tell someone upon release that this is going to be who you are forever, there's not even a chance that your life will ever change. Just try to imagine the psychological damage that does, right? Versus just the door is open, even a crack. We're not saying that it's a guarantee. We're not saying, you get to do whatever you want to do, but we're at least saying that you have that opportunity for grace. And that's what that new law is.
And the audacity to ask for it.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me, is when I invite in a lot of my friends who did life, and they're like, nobody's going to give me this. And I was all like, fam, sis, all we can do is ask. And we're entitled with that opportunity to ask. Like, the law provides us with that space to ask. We've been told no. Most of us have been told no our entire lives. Like, we're used to no's already, but it's that moment, that courageous moment, when community members just realize within themselves that they can ask.
I want to say that I've volunteered 3 times at expungement events, and I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful experience being able to talk to people and know that you are possibly helping them get a job or get housing. And there is a 2.5-hour online training to do, but please do not think that that's going to be difficult. It's Felicia. She's wonderful. She will make you love the tool.
Doesn't have me. We cut off Felicia. Felicia says hello and has passed it off to another lived experience who took my long workshop and helped condense it. So it's a little bit longer, but it's me sprinkled in there still.
I recommend the
sprinkled
longer.
in there. I'm
I
sprinkled.
recommend the longer one. Anyways, my question is, you said that you're funded through Q3. What does that mean? Does that mean after Q3, you're gone? Explain that.
I mean, our expungement work, at least. So we, through the Justice Care and Opportunities Department, we were afforded a 2-year grant to fund our reentry work, directly helping me work as the staff attorney Felicia finally being able to have a salary, as well as Danny. And yeah, that is when our contract or our grant period expires. We're currently looking for different grant opportunities, but like we mentioned, even if we weren't going for federal funding, now the whales that were going for federal funding are now in our smaller pond, and we're certainly struggling to find that funding. Our work is impactful. We're just trying to do our best to connect with folks and help to keep the work moving forward. Yeah, thank you so much.
So that also means that as the Board of Supervisors are having their discussion surrounding funding and allocating Measure J money, it's a crucial and important and incumbent on everybody in this room to continue to talk about the benefits of programs, to remind them what you voted for if you voted in favor of Measure J, because they're shortchanging us with some of the resources. There was, I think, 150 plus, actually I think it's like 250 million plus dollars that have been left on the table and not offered to community-based organizations like ours to apply for.
Who could we write to recommend that they send you money?
We'll connect after this for sure. And as the room as a whole, with Measure J, you would want to reach out to your Board of Supervisor. You have a Board of Supervisor. You have a supervisor that represents the area that you live in.
And we'll follow up, and I'll give information about that.
Perfect.
Yes.
Cool.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And I thought you wanted to dance. No, but we're all in it together, and thank you for really illustrating that and giving us ways that we can connect. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having us.
you.
So thank you all. Thank you everybody on Zoom for being here with us and the great questions that everybody had. So a couple of our upcoming events. We're sponsoring a Lenten retreat at the First Congregational Church in Los Angeles with Ilia Delio, and that's April 4th and 5th. Information is on our website. Take a pretty bookmark at the back and just scan the QR code, and we'll give you all the information you need. Our Friends of the Heart is our volunteer program, and we have an event coming up on March 29th, which is right here at St. Paul's, making seed bombs. I don't like the bombs part, but seed pods to be dispersed through LA County, through the parks and rec, so that the land can be reforested to try to help after the fires. Let me see. You can watch Rebel Hearts, which is the story of the Immaculate Heart Community's birth, on HBO Max. There's a link to it on our website. I've seen it a few times. Some of the stars who are in the movie are in our presence right now. And I never fail to be inspired by it again and again. And number 4, next month, we are going to have Matthew Vestudo here, who is a member of the indigenous tribe of Barbareño and Venturenda Mission Indians. And he is going to speak about a cultural impact, and he's going to have a scholar with him who Immaculate Heart has supported through her journey in school. So next month, that's April 25th. And we like to keep all of our events at no cost. If anybody feels they could help us by donation, there are information on your table. Thank you for that. And lastly, we want to know how we're doing, what you liked, what you didn't like. There is a survey on the table. You can scan the QR code and do it that way. And if there are no more questions, I want to thank everybody, especially to our tech team, who is just so cool and calm under pressure. Thank you, Casper, Dean, and Gabby. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.